Hello, and welcome to the 31st annual retrospective of the Flying Focus Video Collective, what we call the 31st Busiversary. I'm PC Peri. I was one of the founding members of Flying Focus when we started in 1991. You'll see my work tonight in the form of field footage, which we've been able to keep gathering despite the ongoing pandemic.
Hello, I'm Dan Handelman, another person who helped create Flying Focus. We met as part of a coalition opposing the so-called Gulf War, then started our organization later the same year. In July 2022, we merged into Peace and Justice Works.
This year, we covered the interrelated topics of war and peace, racial justice, the environment, animal rights, police accountability, and healthcare. Of the 14 shows we made this past year, I recorded video for 11 of them.
On today's show, you'll see short clips from 24 episodes we produced between November 2021 and October 2022. I recorded video for 3 and contributed video to 3 others. We produced the Busiversary to look back at what we've done and show viewers that you, too, can make TV that matters. You can watch videos on our website at www.flyingfocus.org and on YouTube. To join Flying Focus, support us, or give us feedback on our shows, please call 503-239-7456 or call or text 503-321-5051. Our email is ffbc@flyingfocus.org.
Although many of our shows focus on what government, industry, and some community members are doing irresponsibly, we always try to include voices of other positive solutions. Often these are views you don't hear on anywhere else, especially on corporate media. Join us as we catch clips from this year's shows. It was a cold, dark night, raining, and I was getting video of some teenagers outside of ODOT. What were they talking about, Barb?
Hi, I'm Barb Greene. I've been with Flying Focus since 1995. I'll let y'all do the math on that one. The clip that we have from this program is of teenagers giving testimony by phone to, or in regards to ODOT's plan to widen the freeway, which is not a good idea during a climate crisis.
And it's right next to a school. What were they thinking? Okay, thank you.
Revenue from congestion pricing should be spent on biking, walking, and transit, not more lanes of a freeway. So we're going to give you the opportunity now to hear from a few different people who are rallying with us today. And when you hear them speak, I really want you to keep in mind that these are the people who your climate decisions are going to affect. We should not be put in a position where this is how we're spending our Wednesday nights, but this is an extremely important issue to us, and you need to hear from the youth. So I'm going to pass it off to the next person.
Hi, my name is Taylor Walker. I'm a 15-year-old, and I'm protesting freeway expansions today because I'm scared of not having a livable future and of living in a world full of pollution.
My name is Aurelia. I'm 14 years old, and I'm here today because we have less than 9 years to vastly reduce our carbon emissions, and building freeways is not the way to do that.
My name is Naomi. I'm 15 years old, and I'm here because expanding freeways is not a way to build a safe, equitable future for everyone.
My name is Kate. I'm 15 years old, and we deserve a future where we have clean air to breathe.
My name is Kira. I'm 15 years old, and I believe that everyone should have clean, fresh air to breathe and not be sick from pollution.
I'm Austin, I'm 15 years old, and I don't like going to the lung doctor to take breathing therapy because I can't breathe correctly.
My name is Lucia, I'm 15 years old, and I care about my generation and the future generation's future.
And apologies for the sirens, but I'm Yukaya, I'm 16 years old, and I believe we need to be funding rural and inner city transit instead of freeway expansions in Portland.
So again, please demand ODOT invest in alternatives to freeway expansion with the revenues raised by tolling. This is an extremely important issue to our generation, and we are counting on you to act with our futures in mind. Thank you so much.
So we're speaking to Barb again, but we're still talking about climate action. And there were some scientists giving their perspective on things at the City Hall. And then they moved on to the World Trade Center, and there was a good crowd there. And Jan Hawken has some footage that she took to also. And Barb, what did you do with the editing?
In this clip, the first person speaking is Deke Gunderson, who is a professor and climatologist, and he's talking about the harm that's being done to oceans right now. And then the second part of the clip has some of that footage that Jan Hawken took during climate strike by the young people.
Thank you very much. Nice work.
So one thing you should also know about scientists is that they're really conservative, and it kind of pisses me off. So when they put out these reports, they're really careful about what they say. And I kind of get tired of the statements, highly likely, very likely, kind of likely, maybe likely. It's kind of hard to really understand what they're trying to say. And at some point, you kind of want them to say, holy shit, the planet's on fire. You know, need a little more from that, because they do have a tendency to be conservative. And part of the reason is they're developing these models, and these models are just really predictions. And so, you know, they vary in their accuracy. And some of the things that they don't take into account are some of these tipping points that you hear about. But I'll just tell you one that's kind of a big question mark is if we look at our oceans. Thank God we have them, because right now the oceans are absorbing a lot of that extra heat that's being trapped on the Earth's atmosphere, making the surface temperatures not as bad as they could be. Those oceans are also absorbing carbon dioxide for us, reducing essentially the amount that would be up here, causing things to heat up. And the problem is the oceans have a limited capacity to do that. When they start reaching that limit, things are going to accelerate. And this is the kind of things that these models are difficult to kind of predict, those kinds of things. So I wanted to point that out. One of the things I like to point out is how it's going to affect you. And so one thing we're already seeing is if you like Pacific Northwest fruit, apples, pears, cherries, blueberries, you name it, those plants need to have a certain number of what we call chill hours. Those chill hours are going down, and it's becoming more and more difficult to produce a decent crop, even here in the Pacific Northwest. Our snowpack is going down in the Cascades. So, we can't go skiing anymore. Big deal. That's not the problem. That's where we store our water in the summer.
Okay, we're talking about the editing that Barb did on Doom or Bloom, having to do with It's Up to Us. I think it was Diane Remke, who was doing the editing. And can you believe it? It was raining again out there.
Yeah, Diana did the interviews, which don't show in this clip. This clip is environmental activists talking about what the area used to be like, where Zenith has their headquarters, and what it's like now. And she talks about it used to be a braided river, which is a very interesting concept that I had never heard of before.
Look at this clip and see if you understand something new historically.
The Willamette, a short distance from here, was once a braided river with many woven channels, not the one channel that we see today. It shaped this floodplain, a place of connections, a myriad of streams and lakes feeding into clean water, creating fertile soil, a busy, bustling, life-affirming ecosystem. Turn the clock forward, and we find ourselves here, standing on Giles Lake, now filled in with soil blasted from the West Hills and silt dredged from the river to create the unstable foundation for what is now the industrial sanctuary better known as the Critical Energy Infrastructure Hub, where Zenith sits, displacing and poisoning non-human and human communities. Zenith's shiny new infrastructure is deceiving. The tanks where they store their oil were built in 1957, when Chevron used this facility for mostly asphalt. After several different owners and numerous spills and toxic releases, that didn't stop DEQ from giving owner ARC Logistics a permit to expand the terminal's rail unloading capacity, moving dangerous crude oil through our neighborhoods.
This means that we must flood our city with our voices, and when our voices aren't heard, we must flood the streets and tracks with our bodies until Zenith Energy leaves our city and our land use policies are changed. Shut Zenith down! Shut Zenith down! Shut Zenith down! Shut Zenith down! Shut Zenith down!
Hi again, I'm still Dan Handelman. In this last year, I produced 7 and co-produced 1 program and edited part of all 14 shows. The first show I'm going to share is one that was a long time coming. Flying Focus made a show in 1993 called 5 Billion and Counting, which referred to the approximate global population at the time. 29 years later, the population has expanded so much that the sequel is called Almost 8 Billion and Counting. PC interviewed people involved in the movement Stop Having Kids as they interacted with community members in Portland's South Park blocks. They focused mostly on the human ramifications of overpopulation. I did a Zoom interview with Stephanie Feldstein of the Center for Biological Diversity in Portland, which addresses the ecological aspects of the population issue. In these clips, you'll see a little bit of the philosophies of each. If you watch the full show, you'll also see a public service announcement called Crowded Planet.
I just never thought I was supposed to be talking to them.
And that's fair, you know, like almost past
We're just doing, it's an outreach demonstration. So basically we have signs and we just are standing here and hope to have some productive conversations with the public if they want. So we interact with the public when they come and engage with us first. We don't like walk, after people or anything like that. And we just want to get people to think critically about what it means to bring another person into existence, and that, and then hopefully encourage them to make the responsible choice, which is to help already existing life if they do want to bring someone into existence. So rather than doing that, help those who are here and in need of help now.
Well, our food system is broken. When we have so many technological advancements like new iPhones, new Teslas, and what have you, why haven't we solved global hunger?
There's often this false debate between population and consumption, as if we need to choose sides, as if our, climate change and other environmental crises have to be the result of one or the other. But the reality is that they really are two sides of the same coin. I mean, if we reduced consumption levels, but population kept increasing, we would still run out of space. We would still run out of a lot of resources. We've been putting incredible pressure on the planet and crowding out other species. And similarly, if we stabilize and reduce population and consumption just keeps on growing worldwide, then again, we would be using up far too many resources and again, destroying too much habitat, driving more species to extinction. So we really need to talk about these things as two sides of the same coin. And the solutions for both really advance human rights, equity, and empowerment, and they protect nature.
The next show features Steve Wood, a former Oregon National Guard member who was assigned to be a guard at the U.S. prison in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and now seeks to shut the prison down. He spoke in an event hosted by Amnesty International's Portland chapter, with AI member Megan Harrington conducting the interview. I screen captured the video to produce this show. Wood was told the detainees were the worst of the worst and responsible for the attacks on 9/11. He was assigned to guard Mohamedou Ould Salahi, a man who was held for 14 years without charge. Ould Salahi later wrote a book which was turned into the 2021 movie, The Mauritanian. The event took place just days after the 20th anniversary of Guantanamo being opened in January 2002. At the time of the event, there were 39 people who hadn't been released. As we're recording the Busiversary, there are just 36 of the original 800 people still there. In these clips, you'll hear Steve Wood talk about meeting this supposedly dangerous man and what he thinks will help make a change.
What was your first impression when you met him?
The shock, honestly. I mean, like the entire training up before getting to Guantanamo, because we had like a month in Fort Dix, New Jersey, like a mock prison, and being repeatedly told to never turn your back on them. Be careful. If you let your guard down, they'll find some way to injure you. And even the earth initial reaction force when you raid a cell and slam the detainee to the ground, and the training for that, they're they'll slice your throat, they'll find a way, and these are truly the worst of the worst people. And then I was also you can never socialize with them, and you never allow them to out of their cell without shackles. So when I first meet Mohamedou, he walks out of the cell door with no shackles, with a grin on his face, and I was dumbfounded, It's and then it's nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Shake his hand.
The U.S. imprisoned Mohamedou for 14 years without charge, along with many others, including children that the U.S. imprisoned in Guantanamo. What is the significance of Guantanamo prison for the U.S.? What would change if American people really knew what happens there and in other U.S. occupied places?
I would hope, I hope that if people would care at that point, but people, Americans, we have amnesia, especially because of the media. But if people truly knew, I think they get very upset, the Black Lives Matter movement, and they would do what they had to do to make it change. That's the only way that things change, calling your senators and stuff like that is it can help, but does it really? In the long run, if you truly want to make a huge difference, you have to make noise.
Mm-hmm. These next clips come from the most recent show I produced, which edited together interviews PC conducted at an ongoing protest outside City Hall. 3 people talked about their reasons for being there, including a man who focused on the history of excluding Black, Indigenous, and people of color from capitalist societies, and another man who expressed that it takes a range of tactics to foster change. The other speaker is an Indigenous woman who talked about her personal experiences with racism and the strong feeling she had being among her own people in a recent trip to South Dakota. In these clips, you'll hear a little bit from each one of them. While this protest was held at City Hall on the 3rd week of September, the Black Lives Matter Arbor Lodge protest, which has been going on since 2020, moves around weekly to different areas. Echoing their call to action, I gave the episode the title, On Every Corner, Truth to Power.
Yeah, this is a weekly event that's based upon Black Lives Matter. It's also led by other Indigenous folks in the community. It started back in 2020 after the murder of George Floyd, led by other Black people and Indigenous people to speak out and speak against all the injustice that happens against Black people and brown people in our society. We go around the town to different places of essentially institutional power. We'll go out to different police precincts. We'll go out to the ICE detention facility. We'll come to City Hall. We'll go to the Injustice Center across the street, the federal buildings, because those are spaces that need to hear these messages that we're saying the most.
Yeah, some of the things that we really are, specific things that we're talking about and asking for is reparations. We have a sandwich board that actually has places where people can make reparations personally, but also from a bigger picture of the society needs to make reparations. And, the root word of reparations is repair. We can't move forward and have real healing for all the traumas that are here in this place without reparations. And a lot of that's institutional, but it's personal as well, and everything in between. So that's that's a big one right off the bat that we're asking for. Another thing we talk about is land back, and that's kind of in a way reparations as well. And that's just kind of a simple acknowledgement that this land was stolen and it needs to be given back.
I just know that anything created
by the colonizers has brought nothing but harm. Greed, power, selfish, self-centered, self-seekingness on the backs of all of us BIPOC and other marginalized people. You know, I don't have all the answers, but I know how it makes us feel and how it's affected us.
Despite the fact that I'm a member of Portland Cop Watch, the next show was the only one I produced this year on police accountability. I recorded a public meeting held in October 2021 by the Portland Police Bureau's Behavioral Health Unit Advisory Committee, or BHUAC. They were created in 2013 to offer feedback on police training and policies for interacting with people in mental health crisis. They're required by a paragraph in the U.S. Department of Justice settlement agreement with the city to do so after the DOJ found a pattern of excessive force against people who may have mental illness. I asked the group whether they talk about the many incidents in which Portland police continue to shoot and kill people in mental health crisis. You'll see by their answers that they do not. My question was whether they talk about these incidents at all, as in, what a tragedy, how do we stop this? Some of the answers were about how they don't have access to huge case files and other excuses. A representative of the DOJ pushes for more answers. I want to add that this meeting led to the DOJ finding that Portland was not in compliance with the paragraph about the BHUAC, and that our program is actually listed in their filing to the federal court as evidence. And we're still seeing people get shot and killed by the Portland police who are in mental health crisis. And I'd just like to hear what kinds of discussions there are about that in the committee.
Go back to the work of the BHUAC, and that is to advise on, policy and I'll find the list, but that's certainly, I believe, outside our scope, and so no, that is not something that is discussed.
I understand, from the committee's perspective that isn't within your purview, and that you're not looking at perhaps changes in policies or procedures or training methods with the goal of de-escalating the potential for that type of violent encounter when it happens. And while I might disagree, at least based on what I read in paragraph 95 of the settlement agreement, I'm wondering if you could help me understand where the committee got that advice. Why does the committee think that those cases are somehow off limits or outside of the potential for a recommendation for training or a recommendation for procedure?
Officer-involved shooting or in custody deaths are obviously very complex situations that both have concurrent criminal and administrative investigations that happen. And then also we have a number of other internal things that take place. There's training reviews, internal affair reviews, and all those other things that do take quite an amount of time. And so there is a huge training component that is undertaken with these investigations that fall into the training division. So those are taking place. It maybe isn't taking place under the umbrella specifically of the BHUAC.
We're at the end of part one of the 31st Busiversary. Again, I'm Dan Handelman of Flying Focus Video Collective, and thanks for watching.
I'm PC Peri. We mentioned people who contributed to our shows this year. You are welcome to help us in the future. To find out more about Flying Focus, call us at 503-239-7456 or write to fbc@flyingfocus.org. Our voicemail at 503-321-5051 also accepts text messages.
Today, PC is appearing from Open Signal Portland Community Media, where we usually all get together in a studio. Other than me, PC, and Barb, the show is being directed today by Moss Drake, another Flying Focus founding member, and Alan Evans is helping out in the studio. Although we do receive occasional equipment grants, most of our funding comes from donations, including for copies of our programs.
Thanks again for watching, and to everyone who helped during our 31 years by volunteering, donating, or appearing on our shows. Tune in next week at the same time for part 2 of the 31st Busiversary.
And somebody stole PC's bike during this, and whoever you are, give it back.
Dang it.
There. PC, is your knee acting up? Is that why your knee's up on the table like that?
Oh, I thought I could get away with it. Better not.
Oh. Well, I don't know.
So this was an interview with Danny Rukin from Compassionate PDX, and she explains all of this stuff.